asked the candidates to provide written responses, and so I would encourage everybody to take a look at the thoughtful responses. We have questions around prior experience, highest priorities in Congress, plans to address gun violence, voting rights, housing rights, affordability, and equity. So tonight we have we've only got 10 minutes with each candidate. So we wanted to ask some questions that we didn't have an opportunity to ask about in our written questionnaire, but are still important. So first, I'm just going to make sure on my screen I can see Congressman Evans. Yes, okay, I can see you now. Thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you.
I guess just to welcome you here, I'd like to ask, our first question is, it's nice to get to talk to you, and we'd like to know about why you're running for re-election at this time.
At this time, the reason I'm running for re-election is to complete the work that I've started. It's very important to understand at this particular point, we're at an interesting point in Washington, D.C. and in this nation. And with a global pandemic, with the violence that we have today, those issues need to be addressed. I just released a report about the state of the district. And the state of the district I focused on were 4 basic issues: gun violence, affordable housing, small business, and healthcare. I think that's a combination of trying to address those issues. But the question really depends on leadership. And the leadership that I provided, I've been on small business for 5 years. And that is a very essential aspect in the city of Philadelphia. Small business is the backbone of this country. And I'm also on the Ways and Means Committee, which I'm also on health, and I'm also on working families. I think that kind of combination is important that is continued. We have a unique situation. We have 2 Philadelphians on the Ways and Means Committee. Never before have we had 2 members on the Ways and Means. And that's significant in terms of trying to address the question of poverty. That's been essential to the area that I've been trying to address. Trying to address gun violence. That also has been very important. In terms of growing this city, those issues must be addressed. I think from the information that you read, that shows you that I've been addressing those issues.
Great, thank you. Yes, and thank you for sharing the State of the District report for our committee people. I just want you to know that that is in our shared drive along with the candidate questionnaires. So I would certainly encourage everyone to take a look at that. We appreciate you sharing that with us as well. And you've already talked a little bit about this, but we wanted to ask a little bit more around how to address income and wealth inequality. Inequality in income and wealth has grown since the 1970s, with more wealth concentrated in the top 1% of households now than in prior decades. And for people of color, wide wealth gaps by race and ethnicity have persisted over decades with little change. What economic policies will you support to address these income and wealth inequalities in your next term?
Very seriously, in terms of the child tax credit being permanent, that's something that we've done. And we need to move people out of poverty. If we want to address the issues there, that is the most essential issue. Secondly, in terms of the economy, we need to have tax policy that is fair and that is balanced. Now, I've been around since Trump was president, and the fact of the matter is that the policy he pushed was anti-working people. So when you talk about raising the minimum wage is extremely essential. When you look at it, Philadelphia and Pennsylvania versus New Jersey, Delaware have not raised the minimum wage. We need to do that at the federal level or the state level. And it's clear to me that raising people's income is the key to make it. Number 3 is the aspect about growing jobs. Jobs are extremely essential, particularly small Black, Latino businesses are very important in building. That's one of the reasons I'm on the Small Business Committee, because we need to promote entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is very key to growth. So that aspect. The other aspect is about women and about veterans in terms of the roles that they play. Understand clearly that I voted for anything that can present women the opportunity to take advantage of this program. So minimum wage, child tax credit, small businesses, those are very important in terms of opportunity. Last but not least, I'm also a big promoter on trade in terms of Africa. The fact of the matter, we need to have a clear policy that promotes trade and opportunity. When you really look at it, being on the Ways and Means Committee, that's been a focus of mine. Trade means opportunity, and that's something we need to promote.
Great, thank you so much for that. Now I'd like to ask a question about healthcare. After the passage of the Affordable Care Act, the percentage of people in Pennsylvania who were uninsured was cut by half from 12% to 6%, but over 600,000 Pennsylvanians remain uninsured. And even among people who have insurance coverage, the cost of healthcare can be a major burden, causing people to miss or delay needed care. So what specific steps will you take to improve access to and affordability of health and dental care in the next 2 years?
First, with Building Back Better was an issue that we dealt with the issue. Now, unfortunately, it didn't pass the Senate, but we voted in the House in terms of making sure dental care, making sure using for ear, those things are very essential because ear, dental care are like canaries in the mine. Those are the aspects that tell you some aspect in terms of how your body is affected. Ear, teeth, all of those things are very important. So I share with you that we need to build upon the direction we're going, very similar to what the President of the United States has done, very similar to what President Obama has done, I believe moving in the right direction. Also, I want to say something else. I've stated very clearly, no more Hahnemans. We need no more situations like Hahnemann in terms of that was an equity buyer that came in and basically took advantage of that situation. I worked effectively and efficiently to make sure that Einstein stayed around and made sure that an effort happened between Einstein and Jefferson. I took the lead, I organized all of my various colleagues, Democrats and Republicans. And that's a very key element, to have a skill set to be able to bring people together. Now, if you look across the entire state of Pennsylvania, to save Einstein Hospital, which could have become a Hahnemann, no one else did that, and I took the lead and brought that together. But it was because of my skill set of understanding, I'm the only Democrat on the committee that is on healthcare in the city of Philadelphia. There is no other Democrat on the subcommittee on healthcare. So I've specialized in the importance of healthcare because healthcare leads up to about health disparities. And the reality, when you begin to look at the question about health disparities in terms of how it affects people. So when you talk about people of color, it can be done worse when you have the health disparities. So the fact is something must be done about that.
Great, thank you so much. And we've just got about a minute left. We really appreciate you taking the time out. Are there any closing thoughts that you would like to share with the ward?
First thing I want to do is thank each and every one of you. This is the way the process is to work. You are the petition candidates who run for office and listen to the case they make. The late John Lewis, who I learned a lot from when I was a kid and watched him, used to say, if you don't think things have changed, don't walk in my shoes. Dr. Martin Luther King used to call him the boy from Troy. And it's very important to understand that, yes, it is very tough where we are today, but I'm very optimistic that we can do it. But it's because of people like yourselves. You are the front lines of a democracy. You're connected to your neighbors communicate to you, communicate to them. But by you doing what's necessary and talking to people door by door, house by house, community by community. So that's why I applaud you. I used to be a committee person. I understand what they're doing. I used to be a ward leader. So I say to you, I don't say this lightly about you have a very essential job. Yes, we talk about Washington and Harrisburg, I'll tell you, you are at the ground level in this process you're doing, and I applaud you with your questions, because I sent you two things. I sent you the state of the district, and I sent you my housing plan. The only congressman that came out with a particular housing plan that lay out. So I lay out my housing plan, the state of the district. And the reason I do that, I say this in closing, my staff kind of laughs at me because they say, who's going to read all this? Well, the question is, I knew the second ward would read it. Okay. If nobody else read it, besides my mom may read it. Okay. So I'm saying to you to understand, I read that to give you information so you can make an intelligent decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And yes, thank you for those materials. We do read them. There's a housing plan, the state of the district, as well as your questionnaire responses. We really appreciate you joining us tonight and sharing that information. And thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we are going to keep our evening moving. And I'm just looking through our guest list here. The next 10 minutes, we are slated to talk with Alexandra Hunt. I think I see her. She's joined. Great, wonderful. Hi, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So we're really excited to hear from you and our other candidates tonight. We're going to just dive right into the questions because we know we have not a ton of time with each of you. But I do want to thank you for the information that you shared on the written questionnaire, which also provides a lot of really valuable information about your campaign. So we're going to start with, our first question is really just, why are you running for Congress?
Well, for starters, a little bit of background on who I am. Both my parents are teachers, and they raised me with the belief that education is the ladder to opportunity. So a lot of our campaign is centered around building a school to opportunity pipeline and making sure that there's opportunity for every single young person in this country. Being of my generation, which is a millennial, that's not something all of us had access to, depending on what sort of wealth we were born into, but that's something we need to be passing down to young people in order to ensure we have a healthy democracy. My background is in public health, and I specialize in prevention in a lot of different areas. And when you look at things through a preventative lens, you work your way backwards into a root cause. And in doing that, I would find myself arriving at legislation. This is what has made me politically active. And I have fought for things from healthcare to housing rights to disability rights and criminal legal reform. I decided to run for office when the pandemic first struck and the government failed to come to the people's aid. I think we need to have a government that not only shows up in the biggest crises of our lifetime, whether it's the pandemic or the climate crisis, but also shows up on bad days, because so many people in our district, in our city, in this country are one bad day away from losing everything. And that's where compassionate government needs to step in.
Great, thank you. We'd like to ask a question around inequality. So the next question that we have is specifically related to income and wealth inequality, which has grown over the last decades, with more wealth concentrated in the top 1% of households now than in prior years, with marked disparities by race and ethnicity that have also persisted over decades. So our question is, what economic policies will you support to address these income and wealth inequalities?
So what we're seeing is a lack of opportunity as young people grow into adulthood. And so in order to address the growing wealth gap, we have to raise the minimum wage, create more job opportunity through a federal jobs guarantee. There needs to be a wealth tax upon the ultra wealthy. We need to be empowering unions so that there is a living wage for every single worker out there. And we also need to be providing reparations for communities that have been historically defunded or underfunded.
Okay. Thank you. You talked about your background in public health, and I'd like to ask a healthcare related question. So after the passage of the Affordable Care Act, the percentage of people in Pennsylvania without insurance dropped by half, but over 600,000 Pennsylvanians remain uninsured. And even among people who do have insurance, the cost of healthcare can be a major burden. causing people to delay or miss out on needed care. So what specific steps would you take to improve access to and affordability of health and dental care in the next 2 years?
I believe that healthcare is a universal right. It's a human right, and that we need to remove profit from our healthcare system. So what happened with Hahnemann is what happens when you have profit and you have hospitals trying to make money, and when they find that they can't make money, they close. And Hahnemann really served an underserved population. And since the closing of that hospital, people have died. People have died in the ambulances trying to get to closer care. So we need to move towards universal health care, which we all know as Medicare for all. And to speak to the comment about Einstein, Jefferson actually faced state intervention for forming a monopoly. And it's still with that purpose of creating profit. And it's not focused on providing the best care for those who need care. And that's what our healthcare system needs to move to center around, including dental and vision. The fact that those are separate, and honestly, mental health is pretty asinine.
Thank you. The last question that we have for you, and I know we only had about 10 minutes. We've moved pretty quickly through these questions, so I would invite you to, certainly feel free to share whatever you would like in terms of closing thoughts with the ward, or other things that you think would be valuable for us to know. Oh,
no more questions?
Those were the set questions that we have. So, I know we only have 10 minutes, and so we just want to invite you to share anything else that you think would be important for us to know about your campaign, your vision for what your role in Congress would look like.
I am not a long-winded person, so that's why we got through that so quickly. But I am running because I deeply care. I deeply care about this district and the city and the people in it. And I think that we deserve better than what we've been getting. I am so appreciative of every single person who has shown up for each other throughout this pandemic and prior. I think that one of the things we learned is that while we didn't get enough aid out of the government and we have lost people have died, and it's okay to feel that grief, we've also found a really strong community of people who care and who want to get involved and be there for each other. So our campaign is very grassroots. We're on the ground. I might be knocking at your door. And I'm appreciative to be here and to get to know you, to hear your stories, and to be given this opportunity. So in Congress, I plan to lift up your stories, lift up our experiences, and pull this city up to a place where it can thrive.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we really appreciate hearing from you, the time that you've taken tonight, as well as the responses that you provided in the written questionnaire. I know many of us have read it and more of us will. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Great. All right. So we're going to keep our evening moving and welcome our next candidate. We should have Michael Cogbill has joined us, and this will be our last congressional candidate, and then we're going to move on to our lieutenant governor portion of the evening. So I think we're just confirming that we have Mr. Cogbill with us.
Trying to find him. I thought I saw him before, but now I'm not seeing him. So if Michael, if you're here, but under a different name, or you don't have Michael at the beginning of your name, please feel free to.
He should be on now.
Oh, I see him. There he is.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, such a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. Is it my time now? I'm sorry, I was a little bit too early.
This is perfect. Yeah, we're a couple of minutes behind, so we're moving right along with our evening. I know we've just got 10 minutes of you, so we're gonna dive right into our questions. So first of all, welcome. And just in case, I think you probably got an alert. This meeting is being recorded. We're going to share it on our website when we're done. And we also wanted to thank you for the written responses that you provided to our questions. I know we covered a lot of ground there related to gun violence, voting rights, housing access, a lot of really important issues. So we wanted to start this portion of our discussion with you just by asking, why are you running for Congress?
It's cliche, it's my slogan, but I'm running to take our city in a new direction. Legitimately, I think gun violence prevention has to be at the forefront of the progressive agenda. I think if you believe Black Lives Matter, with more than 50% of Black youth dying, I think we have to talk about like expanded background checks. We got to do something about the ghost guns. Our schools in Philadelphia are horrible. As I kind of went in the questionnaire, I went into my story and being able to like have access to equitable education and summer camps and stuff like that. Like there's a serious divide. And I think like young men of color, young women of color in the city are being obliterated. And you know, there's not a sense of urgency. I think the biggest piece of legislation we got from this administration was infrastructure. Everybody keeps talking about Build Back Better. I seen a meme about child support, but literally the child tax care credit, the child care tax credit is like child support. Like I think that'll help with a lot of folks who aren't paying child support or aren't receiving that money. That was a tax credit that would have been, you know, a decent way to alleviate poverty without putting folks in jail. So I think it's a serious divide in this country. I'm equipped to do something about it. I do like when folks say the word articulate, but I think I was just privileged. My mother drove a bus for 25 years. She worked at SEPTA. I could tell folks stories about equal pay for equal work, what that would do for single moms in North Philadelphia like mine. But not every mom in North Philly worked for SEPTA or made equal pay for equal work, folks. So that kind of separated me, separated my trajectory from the rest of my peers in my neighborhood. So now I'm here causing trouble. It's Black History Month. I worked at the AFL-CIO for about 3.5 years as an organizer. I used to work for Ceasefire PA. I serve as the PAC chair at NACP. And I think we're mobilizing a base of voters that have felt left out of this process. My friends are super excited. My barber serves as my committee chair. He's so excited. He's always throwing it around like it's a big title, but I know it's a lot of work to do. But I'm really eager to mobilize people who haven't felt like the Democratic Party was for them or felt like electoral politics was for them. And I think that's what we're doing. And I'm super excited that the second ward, all of the second ward is still in the third. That's very cool.
Great. Yes, we are too. I was glad to see those maps today. Great. Well, our next question, you've already touched on this a little bit. You talked about the divide that we see in the city and, you know, I think is really prominent here, but all over the country. And that's, you know, income and wealth inequality, which has gotten worse and worse over recent decades. With more money concentrated in the top 1% of households than ever before, with you know, really significant disparities and gaps in wealth by race and ethnicity. So I wanted to ask more about the economic policies that you would support to address these income and wealth inequalities.
Oh, we got to tax the rich, legitimately. Like that's, you know, and I know that's a slogan that folks on the left use, but we have to come up with an equitable tax plan, not just financially, but for our school, like the funding formula for schools, that has a lot to do with wealth. Like if you live in the Radnor district, why are folks getting more per student than you would in North Philly? I just saw a comment about a nurse in North Philly, but that's a neighborhood that needs help. We gotta redistribute wealth. We gotta stop talking about things like housing and healthcare as being affordable. Our human rights and the conversation of affordability should be obliterated. Like those two don't go together. It should be separated like they want to separate church and state. But yeah, I think taxing the rich, coming up with equitable tax plans, jobs is more than just taxes. Jobs, really making sure that like African Americans have access to equitable employment. young African Americans as well, Latinos, anybody, women, the whole conversation about equal pay for equal work. Women are smarter and they work harder than men. I don't know why we make more legitimately. And I mean it. I watch my mom on strike and in various situations just hold it down and almost work like a magician. She was so altruistic, so smart. And right now, I think it's because of her that I'm like even considering a kid from North Philly, like talking about running against this congressman. Like that's what, you know, an equitable economy does. Everybody has a chance to be something that they want to be or create the change that they want to change. But taxing the rich, fairly funding our schools. In Philadelphia, we pay the highest wage tax, but we had a worse public schools. I think that's ridiculous. So it can be done. The gun violence piece, alleviating poverty, doing something about housing, a universal income, it can be done. We're doing a study here in Pennsylvania about universal income. They already did it in California. They gave folks $500, $600 a month. The reports came back that people bought necessities. People bought what they needed. That's what we're going to do. The child care tax credit, going back to that. I have stories of a conversation in the donut shop about a mom saying, oh, I can't wait to get my son a TV and a bed with his money. So they don't even refer to it as their money. It's his money. Like it's his tax credit. I'm gonna get him a TV and a bed. And I think that's ridiculous that was snatched away from people. So we know how to do it. We got to stop catering to the rich. And we got to stop thinking rich folks are better than the middle class or poor, because you had a lot of this money is old. It is really hard to become a millionaire out of nowhere. It's very difficult.
Thank you. So my next question is about affordability of healthcare, although now following your comment about how we shouldn't be talking about the affordability of healthcare, we should be talking about healthcare as a right. I think certainly we all here in the second word, we agree with you, but I do want to ask about, what can be done in the next 2 years to improve access to and affordability of healthcare, health coverage, dental care here in Philadelphia and across the country.
I saw a quick comment like these things do need to go together. I think Medicare for all is the answer, legitimately. It's almost like the gun violence. It's almost like the equitable tax plans. I think we got to get the numbers. We got to elect more people that believe in Medicare for all and not kind of catering to insurance companies. Making sure that hospitals have funding. The fact that hospitals are closing, that's a healthcare inequity. If you live in North Philly, if you got to go to like Einstein, Temple is over flooded. The gun violence in that area is ridiculous. So I know those nurses are overworked, but making sure hospitals don't shut down, not just the funding piece of healthcare or talking about the big policy issues, but making sure people can't come in and buy hospitals and close them in Philadelphia. I think that's an issue as well.
Absolutely. Great. Well, we're just at the end of our time with you. So
Okay.
I just wanted to ask in about a minute if you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with the second ward.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having an open process, letting every candidate share their view. I think it's super cool that this would be posted on Facebook. I got dressed up. I'm grateful to convey these priorities. I'm grateful to have this opportunity. But folks have to remember, it's because my mom made $25 an hour. Like, I'm from North Philly. It was just her as a single parent. But this campaign is about like making sure other people had that opportunity. And in this country, not everybody has the same opportunity. I know it from my experiences working in the labor movement. I know it from my experiences working at Ceasefire, PA, even at the PA NAACP and the inequities and funding for political programming. Everybody deserves a shot, and that's why I'm running. I want to let people know you can do it as well. You're entitled to a shot. You're entitled to the American dream.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank y'all.
For sharing that.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah. All
Thank
right.
y'all so much.